All right. So DeepSeek V4 Pro just hit 93.5% on live code bench in max mode, and Claude Sonnet 5 is the model Anthropic is betting their mid-tier on. I ran both through 4 real tests, and the gap between them is not what I expected. Both models dropped serious updates recently, and if you're picking one for production work right now, this comparison actually matters. I'm putting DeepSeek V4 Pro against Claude Sonnet 5 across 4 tests. Coding, context, pricing, and reasoning. And every number traces back to a real source, no vendor spin. And honestly, the pricing gap is so wide it looks like a no-brainer at first. But there's one specific workflow where Claude Sonnet 5 does something DeepSeek V4 Pro literally can't do yet. And that might be exactly the workflow you're running. So this comparison is for developers and teams who are actively choosing between these two right now. If you're running batch jobs, building agents, or just trying to cut your API bill without tanking output quality, the answer here isn't obvious. And I looked at 20 sources and 40 data points so you don't have to. And I'll tell you exactly where each model earns its keep. Test 1 is coding and debugging. When a model gets this wrong, you're shipping broken code or spending hours tracking down a bug the model introduced and then confidently told you was fine. And that's real-time lost. So I wanted to know which model actually holds up when the code gets messy and the debugging loop gets long. Okay, so here's what I found. DeepSeek V4 Pro in max mode scored 93.5% on live code bench, which is the highest published competitive coding score between these two. But what surprised me is that Claude Sonnet 5 has a fully documented autonomous debugging loop, reproduce the bug, fix it, test it, unfix it to confirm the issue returns, then restore the working version, all on its own, and no equivalent capability is published for DeepSeek V4 Pro. Now, take the SWE bench numbers with a grain of salt here, because DeepSeek's 80.6% is on SWE bench verified, and Claude's 63.2% is on SWE Bench Pro. And those are genuinely different evaluations. So you can't stack those numbers side by side and call it a clean win, because the gap is kind of meaningless without a shared test setup. Honestly, I was expecting a cleaner win for DeepSeek, given those live code bench numbers, but the autonomous debugging capability from Claude Sonnet 5 is a real differentiator that raw scores don't capture. So test 1 is a tie because each model leads in a different coding dimension. And that puts the running score at DeepSeek V4 Pro 0, Claude Sonnet 5 0, 1 tied. Test 2 is context window and long document handling. And the failure mode here is brutal. You load a massive code base or a long legal doc, the model hits its output ceiling mid-generation, and you get a truncated response that looks complete but isn't. And you might not catch it until something downstream breaks. So output limits matter just as much as the context window itself. Both models hit 1 million tokens on context input, so that's a draw, but the output ceiling is where it splits. DeepSeek V4 Pro goes up to 384,000 output tokens per call, while Claude Sonnet 5 caps at 128,000, and that's 3 times the output capacity on DeepSeek's side, which is a real number and not a rounding difference. Though Anthropic openly documents accuracy degradation as token count grows. So yeah, the 384,000 versus 128,000 output gap looks huge, and it is. But context fraud is real on both sides. Anthropic actually says so in their own docs, which I think is honest of them. And DeepSeek doesn't publish an equivalent statement. But absence of documentation isn't the same as absence of the problem. So if you're pushing either model to 1 million tokens, you want to be curating that context carefully regardless. I was expecting a closer call since both models advertise 1 million context, but that output ceiling difference is the thing that actually matters for bulk generation work. DeepSeek V4 Pro takes test 2 because 384,000 output tokens versus 128,000 is a concrete directly comparable number, and it's not close. So the running score is DeepSeek V4 Pro 1, Claude Sonnet 5 0, 1 tied. Test 3 is API pricing, and this one hits you in the budget before it hits you anywhere else. You build something cool, it scales, and then you get an invoice that's way bigger than you modeled for because you didn't account for output token costs. And that's a real thing that happens. So I wanted to see what you're actually paying per million tokens on each side, not the marketing number, the real number. I pulled the official API rates for both. DeepSeek V4 Pro comes in at $0.435 per million input tokens and 87 cents per million output tokens, while Claude Sonnet 5 is at $2 input and $10 output at intro pricing. Going to $3 and $15 after August 31st, 2026. So that output difference is roughly 11.5 times right now. And what surprised me is the provider variation on DeepSeek's side, ranging from $0.435 on the official API all the way to $1.74 on Together AI. Okay, so DeepSeek V4 Pro wins test 3, and it's not even close on the numbers. 11.5 times cheaper on output at official rates is a real cost advantage. And I was expecting the provider pricing variation to be minor, but a 4x spread across providers makes actual budget planning genuinely harder than the headline number suggests. So that brings the tally to DeepSeek V4 Pro 2, Claude Sonnet 5 0, 1 tied. Test 4 is reasoning and multi-step problem solving. And the failure mode here is subtle and kind of scary. The model sounds confident, gives you a complete looking answer, and it's wrong or it hallucinates a fact mid-chain, and every step after that is built on a bad foundation. And by the time you catch it, you've already acted on it. So that's the real cost of weak reasoning in a production agent. What surprised me here is the hallucination stat. DeepSeek V4 Pro has a 94% hallucination rate on AA omniscience, meaning when it doesn't know something, it almost always responds anyway, and that's a documented production risk. While Claude Sonnet 5 is reported to have a lower undesirable behavior rate than Sonnet 4.6, though that's vendor reported and not on the same benchmark. So I can't stack those numbers directly. And honestly, the benchmarks here are all over the place. DeepSeek V4 Pro has GPQA Diamond at 90.1% in max mode, which is strong, but there's no published Claude Sonnet 5 score on that same eval, and Claude's agentic wins on BrowseComp and OS World are on different benchmarks entirely. So I can't give you a clean head-to-head number, and I'm not going to pretend I can, and both models offer tiered reasoning modes at the API level, which is pretty much functional parity. So test 4 is a tie, and I kind of expected that going in, but the 94% hallucination rate on DeepSeek's side is a thing I didn't expect to find documented so plainly. And that's a real flag for confidence-sensitive applications. So without a shared benchmark, you can't call a winner here. And the final running score is DeepSeek V4 Pro 2. Claude Sonnet 5.0.2 tied. So here's where DeepSeek V4 Pro is the clear pick. Output tokens cost roughly 11.5 times less at official API rates, 87 cents per million versus $10. The output ceiling is 384,000 tokens per call versus 128,000, so bulk generation tasks just work better. And that 93.5% live code bench score in max mode is the highest published competitive coding number between these two models. And here's where Claude Sonnet 5 is the clear pick. The autonomous debugging loop, reproduce fixed, test unfixed to confirm, restore is a documented agentic capability with no DeepSeek equivalent published. Pricing is consistent across all providers, so your cost model actually holds at scale. And a 94% hallucination rate on the other side makes Claude the safer option for client-facing production work where a confident wrong answer is a real operational risk. Honestly, I went in thinking price would dominate this decision, but the autonomous debugging capability and the hallucination rate data made it more nuanced than that. So here's the decision rule. If you're running high volume batch jobs and cost per token is your main constraint, DeepSeek V4 Pro is the call. And if you need a model that behaves predictably inside long-running agents and client-facing workflows where a confident wrong answer is a real risk, Claude Sonnet 5 earns its premium.